All right, welcome to handpaintedabstracts.com. I'm your host, Adam Ivy, and we've got another special guest for you today. Her name is Sarah Lapp. She is an abstract artist based out of Fredericksburg, Virginia. Sarah, why don't you say hello to everyone watching today?
Hello, everyone.
Hey. So, Sarah, we are going to jump right into this thing because that's what the audience loves. The first thing that we want to talk about is your very interesting background. I love your background, and I want you to share that with people and how you got to the point that you are with art today.
So I grew up kid in Wyoming. Grew up in Wyoming, Montana. My arts education had a lot of holes in it, to say the least. And I was used to thinking that art needed to be something that looked exactly like something else. The art that I would see was, very Western, very brown, minimal brushwork. And the exception to that, two exceptions. One was plenty of just super graphic illustrations in children's books. And the other one that really carries with me now is the train cars that would roll through Wyoming that would have all sorts of bright, amazing graffiti on them. And that basically to me might as well have been the moon. As a kid growing up, but it was like, wow, there's people and they're doing these things and they're fascinating, and it's, somebody loves this, somebody's passionate about this, and that's why it's doing these things and traveling through where I am. Yeah. So that was a good departure point for me. I didn't actually fill in the holes in my education until I was in my late 20s, and then once I went to school and understood the parameters of visual language that I should have received way earlier in my education, everything just clicked, and I just took off running.
So a couple of things in there. First and foremost is it's really cool, and I've always kind of picked up on that too, like graffiti on train cars. The cool thing about them is they travel through so many different places. Really, that artwork is being seen by a lot of different people in a lot of different environments. So for you to be like, that might as well have been the moon, I completely get that. So what I wanted to ask you though is, does it feel like because for me, it feels like you've almost got this underdog background, right? It's not the traditional art upbringing. It's not the traditional exposure. But then when you finally get that shot in art school, you say it just clicks. And it's like you close the gap so fast. Did you feel like that?
Yeah, I do. And I still do sometimes. I was just realizing that you can do it. There's no witchcraft. There's no sorcery. It's literally just trying and learning, and if anything, those roadblocks just builds your tenacity. That's a big thing for me. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Keyword in that entire sentence was tenacity. That's something that I really admire about you, especially from our last conversation. I don't want to put your position out there. I'll kind of let you do that, but can you talk about why you approach art with the tenacity that you do, and how it affects your artwork versus maybe an artist who's not approaching it from that same standpoint?
It's how I pay my bills. I've got 3 kids. I'm a single mom, and it's not just how I pay my bills, but it's how I stay excited about life, because to take on this career that's not an easy career under less than ideal situations, and know that I'm taking care of everything, if anything, it just motivates me to be more ambitious, and it makes me more aware of how life unfolds and how my days unfold, and that comes through, I put that through in my work, and so it's a constant evolution for me to just keep all of those things running, and it helps me understand it. Part of how I paint is how I input or process what's around me. And so it's all incorporated in that one thing.
So you've got to be very disciplined, right? You've got to approach your artwork almost not almost as a business. Does that ever drain you creatively? Because you've got to balance this creative, and this freedom of expression and, all of those beautiful colors that art is, with the regimented, I've got to show up, I've got to do X, Y, Z, get this done. How do you balance that?
Every now and then I shoot myself in the foot by having a project that's going on and getting so inspired about something else. Just something that and then I'll get sidetracked and I'll think, oh, but this is about this, when the project that I was about may have needed to be about that. But it all helps each other. It's really hard for me to go back and do something when it's not a genuine discovery sort of way that I'm working on it. So they weave together, and it all is, you know, things come through in my work, you know, projects that I did 3 years ago that I would have never undertook come through in my work later, and my work is stronger because of it. So to get back to your question, it's very disciplined, in the sense that, you know, you always have to be doing something. It doesn't always have to be painting every single, you know, every single moment of the day. It's admin, it's, you know, being a single mom, it's birthday parties and doctor's appointments, and then getting back to work. Tonight I'll finish a piece for a client in Chicago.
Yeah.
I think, but I like to have those poles in the water. It makes me feel more excited just knowing that tomorrow is going to be better because I'm working really hard today. Yes,
very, very well said. I find that the higher up you go, the more hats that you have to wear, and you've got to know how to balance it. So, I mean, every step of the career just kind of prepares you for the next one. But with that being said, do you ever go back to some of your beginning paintings, or you know, just even a painting from maybe 5 years ago and say, oh man, if I would have did this, or do you look back, or are you just one of those artists that only look forward?
I do look back. Lots of times, especially when I sell older work, when I'm getting ready to ship it, I'll look at it and I'll think, oh man, I'll be interested in how I did something. But it's interesting because when I first, you know, 5 years ago, when I started selling well, I didn't really understand all of the different intrinsic things in my mind as to why I would paint one way or another. So now understanding the intuitive process more, and just understanding where my inspiration comes, and understanding how important that emotive factor is for me, that makes me think, oh, I could have nailed that. You know, or maybe there's some work that I looked at and I thought, what is it that's speaking to me in this? And you know, maybe it's representational work, or maybe it's abstract work, and now I can look at it and say, oh, that's boiling down to contrast, or this ethereal nature of things coming so closely but not quite touching each other, you know, as far as the color structure would go. So yes, absolutely.
So you just said something pretty interesting. You said, now that I have a better understanding of how I'm inspired and what inspires me, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you get in your zone? If you know that you've got to turn it on, you can't wait for it to come to you, you've got to turn it on. Like, what are some of the things that you're doing?
I'm kind of lucky in that, because part of it is that I can't get into it. Like I can't mind trick myself. I have to let it be very genuinely what it is. I'm an intuitive painter, so it's, you know, it's a series of decisions that I'm making as the canvas has a conversation formed on it based on what I am adding or taking away from it. So in that, knowing that that's my process, and knowing that if I just depart, just take that first step and start, I'm going to be good. That's how no matter what it is, I'll eventually know what it is, but at the beginning, it's just that first step.
Yeah. You know what? I recently painted, we had a family day, and we took these blank canvases out into the front yard, right? And my wife's got all this paint because my wife does the painting around here. So she's like, we're all going to paint today. I never realized how intimidating a blank canvas is. It's really an intimidating feeling. Like when you've got this 12 by 24 in front of you, and it's just all blank, and you just pick up the brush and it's like, okay, here we go.
You have to think challenge, not intimidating. You have to think challenge.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you. So like when you've got a blank canvas, what is that? What's going through your mind at that point?
I'm excited. Lots of times I don't honestly know what it's, I mean, if it's work that has, sometimes I use vintage family photos or photos of my children in mixed media work. And so then I have a departure point, but the rest of the time, because it's so much of how I process just my experiences in my life and my world around me, I'm excited to see what happens. I'm excited to understand what it means to me as I work through a piece. And there's definitely a sense of resolution when I think, oh, you know, maybe it's the way that light comes through something, or maybe there's all sorts of different reasons that it would make sense to me one way or another. But
you talked about how you use family photos, and I want to kind of talk about that, because that's really a staple in your style, is what I found. Like you'll take something that's very dateable or you're easily able to look at it, no, that's 1930s, that's the 1940s, that you're able to put that era on it, and then you'll combine that with something very timeless, like just super abstract, and it kind of messes with your brain a little bit, because it's like, I got one thing from way over here and one thing from way over here. Can you kind of talk about that process, how you began doing that, what it means to you, just how did that become a staple in your work?
Well, the experiences are all the same, whether it's women standing in front of a car in dresses in the 1920s, such as one that I did of my grandmother, or friends gathered together. We take pictures at certain junctures, and we take pictures when interesting things happen, and sometimes we take pictures when mundane things happen, and that doesn't change. So some of the paintings in those series are titled things like The Things That Stay the Same, and that's what that's about. And it helps me connect to my background by making these gigantic abstract things where I'm literally touching and like manipulating and pulling the images of my family or my children onto them. It's an intimacy. And it's funny because obviously they're not there with me, but I definitely feel like I'm closer to them and closer to where I'm from based off of that.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. You were talking about hands-on, and when we spoke off camera, you were saying that's very important for you to instill in the artwork. And when somebody's potentially going to spend money or invest in a piece of yours, you want them to know there were two hands on this, that every inch of this canvas was touched by these fingers. Kind of talk about why that's so important, and what you're really trying to convey to a collector or a potential buyer.
I've thought about that a lot, and some of the reasons that I can come up with is, one, growing up and seeing art that you couldn't understand how it was made at all. There was no sign of human interaction in it. That has to be part of it. Or the ideology that if you can make something that looks like a human never touched it, then that's perfect. But for me, when you look at marks, and I either work just strictly with my fingers or with a palette knife, when you look at those marks, that's literally a record of how your hands and your body move when you're creating a piece of work. And so,
wow. I've never heard it put that way. Very good.
You can look at the masters. Rembrandts have fingerprints on them, and so it's literally it's this intimacy and this immediacy that is timeless. To be able to see that mark that's created, I think that's probably why it's so important to me.
Yeah. So obviously you are a huge family woman. What do you want the legacy of your artwork to be, or what, when it's all said and done, what is the legacy that you want to leave, not only to your family, but to the collectors, just anybody that experienced the art? Is it that record that you're speaking of?
There's so many layers to that. I think just doing it. There's this brave thing, and I know that there's lots of other things that I could do, but I'm good at this one. And so instead of going and doing the things that are safer and less brave, I hope that my children I hope that they can carry with them that it's good to do the thing that's ambitious, that makes you happy. There's nothing to be scared of trying something and not having it work out how you expect it to. In fact, most of the things, even my paintings, they never turn out the way that I would think they are. They're way, way cooler. So there's definitely that.
Okay. And one more question. I always love to ask a question for other artists that may be watching is, obviously as an artist, the works that you create reflect different times, different periods in your life. When you're going through a emotionally exhausting period in life, and you still have to be creative in that time period of life, whether it's stress, maybe a loss of a love, whatever, how do you portray that on canvas? How do you still channel that and get it onto a canvas? I guess what I'm asking is, how do you not become so robbed by life that you can't create? How do you get through that?
Having just gone through an extremely traumatic experience, sort of like that, I know that you don't always feel the things that you expect. When something big happens in your life, you're never prepared for it. You don't actually know what those feelings are going to be. You don't know how it's going to feel to wake up or grow or move on or any of those things. And so as far as your work is concerned, or my work is concerned, you just have to let it be where it is. I mean, there was a point where I wouldn't find the resolution in pieces and I would work on them, and they never seemed finished, but I got to understand that was them, and there's a reason that they were like that, and those pieces were successful, and those pieces are loved, and to just appreciate that you should, especially with your work, if you work in a way where you're processing, which I think lots of artists do, whether it's musical artists or visual artists, you just have to let that be what it is, and that's the genuineness of it is what matters, and what's going to help both your processing and like you being better for it, as well as just the integrity of the work itself.
Wow. So let go, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you letting go of now? What are you working on now? What can people be excited for?
Let's see. I have a new series of the semi-representational with the vintage family photographs. They're quite large. They're going off. And I also have some that are of skies. And I have a series of white paintings that I've done, and it sounds crazy, but there's something about just getting the colors so close together that they shimmer, and you can create that so like the surface of the sequin, when it bends, it's all the same surface, but the light hits it differently. And so if you can get those colors close enough, they shimmer. And so I'm working with those. I've usually worked just strictly abstractly with them, but at this point I'm introducing imagery of things that we would normally see that would catch light differently, such as clouds. And just also back and forth, I have to have those big, like I have to reset my brain with a big, colorful, red piece, and then I go back and I can work subtle and like
it's the bounce. Yeah, it's the bouncing back and forth of an artist. Yeah, it's the method to the madness. Where can people find your artwork, Sarah?
You can Google me, Sarah Lapp Art. You can find me on Statista. I'm an artist with Statista as well.
Awesome, a great site, Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this. You have so much insight as an artist, and you're very relatable. That's what I really love about you. Like you don't take it all the way left field with it. You bring it right home and say, yeah, I'm an artist, but I'm a woman first, I'm a mom, I'm all these things. That's just something that I'm really good at, that I love to talk about. So you're very relatable. I definitely appreciate that about you. Guys, definitely check out Sarah Lapp on Statista and all over Google as well. And you can also find more great interviews here on handpaintedabstracts.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram, all of those different places. Sarah, thank you so much. We enjoyed your time.
Thank you, Adam. You're fantastic.
Tell my wife that, please. All right, we are going off air now.